We'll get to our guest in just a moment. I do want to point out, of course, you're listening to News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. It's 8:33 and it's 62. And just if you're having difficulty listening to us, I've been saying you've got to get in touch with Dr. Christine Pickup at Mount Harrison Audiology in Rupert. Did you know that your hearing health and your brain health are connected? At Mount Harrison Audiology, she's been studying the research on cognitive health and hearing. The most recent findings prove that when hearing loss is addressed with hearing aids, the effects of cognitive decline are greatly diminished. Hearing is critical for communication, for connection to others, and for overall well-being, and now would be the time to improve your hearing. You can call Mount Harrison Audiology for an appointment today. The number 312-0957. Steve Millington is the chairman of the Twin Falls County Republican Party. He joins us on Tuesday mornings and enlightens us for generally about half an hour, and then other days he actually fills in and he does the whole 2 hours. I actually made a list today of the things I mentioned to you in the email earlier. So,
okay.
First of all, let's get this out of the way because we can do it in a few minutes. I looked at Randy Staples compiles every week a list of where everybody is with their fundraising, and Simpson's opponent, Mike Simpson's opponent, apparently has raised no money whatsoever because it's showing up goose eggs.
On her, excuse me, normally I come in here early enough that I can kind of get all of these warm-up things out of according to filings with Secretary of State, she has not raised any campaign contributions for her campaign. So what does that tell us? Why is she even in the race? What's going on?
Why even bother?
Well, it isn't a matter of why even bother. The Democrats need to, they have, a few years ago, 6 years ago, they decided that they were going to fill positions on the ballot in every position, as much as it was possible for them to do. And so there was a couple of times when Simpson didn't have any opponent in the primary election, and there was no opponent in the general election. And so he just kind of had a free pass, if you will, okay? Well, the Democrats have taken a much more active stance, and they are filling those positions, those ballot positions, with people who are willing to run and represent the Democrat Party. So bad choice of terms, but it's my term. I think she is the designated driver. They were looking around, they needed somebody, and she said, okay, I'll do it. And so she put her name on the ballot, and she has the backing of the Democrat organization throughout the state. Doesn't have a lot of money. My guess is that she may come up with a little bit of money in the next 30 to 45 days and buy a few spots in areas where she could get a little bit of traction. That would be like in the Pocatello, Idaho area, and in an area of Boise, where there's a growing Democrat population. I don't know that we'll get much advertising in the Magic Valley area, simply because we're so strongly Republican in nature. But the key thing I think that we need to remember, especially all of us Republicans, that is the Democrats are no longer going to give us a get out of jail free card. They are going to fill all of those ballot positions with candidates and run them against the Republicans continually, so that they can get their voice heard out there.
And I'm not making any aspersions about Simpson or any other Republican, but I think that the belief now is that any time we could have something happen on the scale of what happened to Larry Craig, and because of that, always have someone on that ballot in opposition.
I think what they're doing more than anything else is building the stable where they can go to and find people to put on the ballot in whatever kind of a situation or event may occur, so that they have a good solid list of individuals that they can go to and put them on the ballot or put them in a runoff race of any kind to continue to hold the Democratic position. And yeah, she's got to have a strong constitution to hang in there and just go out and fight the battle, and the odds are overwhelmingly against her. But
it can turn fast, though. I was in Delaware when Christine O'Donnell was running there for Senate 6 years ago, and I was at meetings in the spring when they were literally passing a coffee can around so she could get money in that so she could drive to her next appearance, so she could pay for the gasoline. when she won the primary, she suddenly ended up with $7 million to spend. And so it went from coffee cans.
It's a big checkbook.
Right.
Yeah, almost, and I think to a large extent, what we're seeing is the Democrats are no longer giving the Republicans a free ride. They are going to have people running in all of these major races all of the time, so that they can continue to build a long list of potential candidates in many different areas, so that they're not left standing at the door.
We've got more to talk about with Steve Millington in just a few minutes. I've got a couple of questions about Donald Trump and what he may have in the way of an impact on perhaps state and local races. Probably not really a big concern in Idaho, but we'll get the experts' take on it coming up in just a few minutes. Bill Colley with you as well on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. It's 65. Just want to make a quick mention tomorrow morning. Well, let me set it up this way. Are you happy with the look of your face in the mirror every day? Some of us, we look at ourselves and go, it's okay. And then you see a photograph from 10 years ago and you say, oh, how do you keep your face youthful? We're going to talk about that tomorrow morning with Jonathan Tripp, Dr. Jonathan Tripp from Tripp Family Medicine. And of course, one of his areas of expertise early on in medicine happened to be skincare. And so he's going to talk about that tomorrow morning between 8:30 and 9 o'clock. Please feel free to call in if you've got a question or comment for him while he's in the studio. And of course, Tripp Family Medicine is located on Fillmore Street here in Twin Falls, directly across from the main post office. The doctor is still looking for new patients, and they can often see you on the very same day if you come up with an issue where you need them on somewhat of an urgent basis. 844, Steve Millington, the chairman of the Twin Falls County Republican Party, in studio with us. It's 65, Bill Colley as well, on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. Donald Trump may finally be getting back on the horse after falling off a few times.
A few times, you think? Maybe.
Here he is speaking yesterday in Youngstown, Ohio, about refugee resettlement.
To accomplish your goal, you must state a mission. The support networks for radical Islam in this country will be stripped out and removed one by one, viciously if necessary. Viciously if necessary. Immigration officers will also have their powers restored. Those been taken away. Those who are guests in our country that are preaching hate will be asked to return home immediately, and if they don't do it, we will return them home.
Do you think that had some sort of appeal?
It sounded like it did, and you know, the more difficulties we run into trying to get our heads around this immigration issue, the better that's going to resonate, the better that's going to sound. We don't have the sound bite here, but continuing in his speech, he said we need to vet all of these people and make sure that their objectives are in alignment with the stated objectives of the United States of America, that they want to be part of our system and they subscribe to our values and our patriotic goals and ideals. And if they don't, we don't want them here. And I think that's consistent with the inscriptions at the Statue of Liberty. Send me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free.
A poem, but not policy.
Yeah, right. A poem, but not policy. And we need to go back to that. We're okay with those yearning to breathe free and those seeking. But when they come here seeking to live under our ideals and our beliefs, but when they come here absent of those ideals, then they can be nothing but destructive to the framework and the foundation of this country. And he's got a point there. We're okay with it. We'll take the people who need help. We have always been a generous and helpful nation, always, and we can and will be in the future. But we've got to understand, not everybody out there likes us. There are factions and groups of people who don't really like the idealisms of freedom and United States of America.
Now, how does he use this, though, to try and catch up and then get back ahead of Hillary Clinton, because if you're listening to the mainstream media, Republicans can just as well stay home because it's all over with now.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Um, he takes the uh, ISIS problem and puts it squarely on the shoulders of Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. And I think he uses Obama's name first and Hillary's second. Actually, I guess it's Clinton, but everybody just calls her Hillary. Um, because it has gained so much traction and so much momentum during the 8 years of Obama. And so if this thing continues to accelerate around the world and even here, especially here in the United States, um, he's going to put the blame for that right on Hillary Clinton's shoulders and say she helped foster an attitude in the world that permitted the rapid growth of this quote junior varsity team unquote. And if he can continue to point that error directly onto her, he will get some traction from that.
No, I think his battle with the Khan family hurt him. But I think that last week when the media tried to say that when he said President Obama was founder of ISIS and they tried to make it sound as if he was being literal, I don't think that flew with the public. I think
No.
the public was smart enough to understand. And will the media attacks on him benefit him before all of this is over?
You know, for the past year, he has used the media exceptionally well to get accomplished his desires and aims. Um, it's not going to be quite so easy now. We have narrowed the field down, and we're focusing in on a very fine edge, and he's going to have to be quite a bit more um, definitive in his statements. Yesterday's speech, Youngstown, Ohio, I think, I'm not sure, was pretty much a teleprompter speech. Today he is in
Milwaukee.
La Crosse, Wisconsin, which
Right.
is just north of Milwaukee. And the commentators this morning were saying that they were pretty sure he would use a teleprompter speech, which means it's going to be pre-written and he's just going to go down through the point. They're not going to give him the latitude to shoot from the hip, so to speak. If he will quit shooting from the hip and go back to a predefined message and deliver the message very succinctly and deliberately and stay on task, he is going to start winning recruits. Now, you look at the polls and they all say, oh, it's over. The Republicans should just fold their tent and go home and start crying, and it's over. Hillary's going to be. There was right after the conventions, Hillary's polling just bumped the convention bump, the huge numbers, well above the 50% mark, and Trump just appeared like he had dropped off the face of the earth. You look at the polls that were conducted, I want to say Thursday and Friday of last week, and now all of a sudden Hillary Clinton's numbers are no longer above the 50% mark. They're in the mid 40 range, and Trump's numbers are in the very high 30 to 40 range. So what used to be a 9 or 10 point gap has now narrowed down to about a 5.5 to 6 point gap. And her numbers are coming down. Trump's are not going up as fast, but her numbers are falling, and his are not falling as well.
Well, let me get to a question in a moment. It's 8:51. It's 65. Steve Millington is our guest on Top Story with Bill Colley on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. We're still seeing more and more revelations coming out, and I'm sure there'll be more emails. I am sure that we're going to see a lot more on the front of her foundation. And I think media is ignoring the fact that this may have a huge impact still on the American people.
I don't think that's going to go away. And I'm kind of, I don't want to say I'm naive, but I guess on a national scale I am. The two committees in the House of Representatives, the House Oversight Committee and one other one, can't think of the name, sorry about that, have sent letters to the Department of Justice saying we want criminal filings against Hillary Clinton because her testimony, perjury, that's what they're looking for. her testimony to the House subcommittee on something or another, and her statements to FBI Director Comey are in conflict with one another. They are not in keeping. And one time or the other, she is not telling the truth. She's perjured herself either to the Congress or to the FBI, and we want criminal proceedings. Well, I got news for you. That's not going anywhere as long as we have.
Comey, by the way, is he's just a crime monitor, like in the commercial.
Yeah,
That's
right.
all he
Yeah,
just tells you a crime has
yeah.
happened. We have a caller with us. Caller, you're on the air with Steve Millington and Bill Colley. Go ahead.
Good morning.
The president is like a head football coach, and for success, he picks good coaches for the line, special teams, etc. Do you think it will help make Trump more popular if he announces who will be in his cabinet, Dr. Ben Carson, Governor Perry, etc.?
You know, I have thought about that several times. In fact, there was a very interesting book written, it's been several years ago. Lee Iacocca wrote it, and it was, I think it said, "Where have all the leaders gone?" I hope I've got the right name on that book. But Iacocca wrote it, and one of the things that he suggested was right in line with our caller. We need to force presidential candidates to outline for us who is going to be on their staff, senior staff. For example, cabinet positions. Who is going to be Secretary of State and Treasury and Commerce and right on down. Here's the team that I'm going to have working for me. And our caller makes a good point. Perhaps if Trump could start lining these people up and saying, here is your Attorney General, here is your Secretary of State, we would see a tremendous change in.
I hear Rick Perry's name, and it just makes me so sad because there was the guy I think who would have appealed to every corner of the Republican Party and would have been just a phenomenal leader as president of the United States.
And I can think of two or three more that would fit. Bobby Jindal, I can see a great place for him in one of those cabinet positions.
Right, education or health.
Yes, absolutely.
Before we eliminate that department.
Maybe I would like to be the Secretary of Education. It would be a 90-day job because in 90 days I would have it completely dismantled, and it would be a grant-only position to the states. The federal government has no business being in education.
We've got a couple of minutes to go.
Okay, only two?
Yes, and then Grant's going to push you out of your seat.
Yeah, he will.
But locally, have you heard anything from Republicans? Are they at all concerned that Trump will impact their races?
I don't think so specifically in the state of Idaho. We talked about at the opening here about Mike Simpson's opponent, and that she's just having a tough time raising any money. I think that's indicative of most of the Democrats that we're seeing on the ballot. They're going to have a tough time making any traction. Raul Labrador's candidate does have some money received, but
and
nothing.
Raul has spent most of his already.
Nothing compared to what Labrador has and has yet available to him to come in. It just hasn't been used. And keep in mind that in the case of Labrador, much of his campaign advertising is going to be done by political action committees, and it won't show up as direct contributions to his campaign, but in his behalf. So, locally, I don't think we're going to have too much, but it's like I said at the beginning, the Democrats are going to be pushing us being Republicans, at every turn, and we have got to remain vigilant and strong and find good, solid candidates that we can get on those ballots and put them in appropriate positions and continue to support them and give them the help they need so that we do not find ourselves ever having to play catch up. We got to stay on the front edge of this thing.
By the way, Raul Labrador is scheduled to join us tomorrow morning on the show in the first hour. So just passing that along to people as well. And eventually, some of these Democrats are welcome to come on the program. Nobody is barred from doing that. And if I treat the Republicans well, I'll treat the Democrats on air with the same dignity and respect. That'll be the goal of all of this.
Surely.
and people can make their own minds up about who they're going to vote for. Mostly, I think they already have.
To a large I think one of the things we were talking about, the polling, where Hillary Clinton's numbers have come down from the mid-50s, now she's down into the low 40s. Those people have suddenly turned into, quote, undecided voters, unquote. And in many cases, they have decided that they're not completely convinced that it's a Democrat. They have gone to undecided, and most of the undecideds are going to move to the Republican side of the ballot.
We just don't have the ability, like Gary Johnson says, for everyone who votes for me, they'll get a free dime bag of dope. We don't have an ability to do that.
We can't do that. We can't make that happen.
We'll talk to you in a week.
Yes, sir, we will. Thank you.
Steve Millington on the air with us this morning. He's the chairman of the Twin Falls County Republican Party. Prosecutor Grant Loeb's coming up following news from Fox at 9 o'clock. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and NewsRadio1310.com.